Thank you all for coming and for coming to the NOFA conference. We've just heard a bit scary but inspiring keynote speech. And this topic is also a little scary, but never fear. It's better to know the truth so that you know what you can do about it. Who here has heard of glyphosate? So pretty much everyone's familiar. Okay, good. Just a quick note about me. I have a master's in nutrition from Bridgeport University. I'm a certified nutritionist. I'm also a Western Price chapter leader for the last 12 years and a local food activist. I organize a buying club for local and hopefully glyphosate-free foods. And I'm a homesteader. And I love to come to NOFA conferences and learn all about farming. So what we're going to talk about today is an introduction on glyphosate, and then the connection of glyphosate to chronic disease, and where glyphosate is found in our food supply, and then lastly, what you can do to avoid eating glyphosate. So what is glyphosate? It's the main ingredient in the herbicide Roundup. Its chemical structure is very simple. It's glycine, which is an amino acid, with a phosphate group attached. So you got this phosphate group, and this is basically glycine. Glycine is a very common amino acid. It's used in basically all proteins, enzymes, and collagen. Glyphosate is also a mineral chelator. It binds all sorts of minerals like zinc, manganese, iron that are in the soil. And it works as an herbicide by preventing the uptake of those minerals by the plant. And that's how it kills the weed. Now, Roundup-ready crops are engineered to survive Roundup applications, so they will not die and the weeds will die, at least in theory. But as a result, Roundup-ready crops are extremely mineral deficient because the glyphosate has chelated a lot of minerals and they can't take them up. Now, Monsanto has claimed that with GMOs, glyphosate use would go down, and instead it has risen dramatically over the last few years, as we're going to see. Glyphosate is now the most used agricultural chemical ever, according to Newsweek. And we're now using 300 million pounds of glyphosate each year in the US alone, up from like 11 million in 1986 or something. That's been a 15-fold increase since 1996. And during that time, the EPA has increased the safe levels for glyphosate on corn by 50 times. So the more the industry uses, we'll just increase the safe level, and it's all safe. Here's the link if you want to look it up. So why this huge increase? Well, we are growing more GMO crops in terms of acreage. But now it's also being used on a lot of non-GMO crops, which wasn't the case before. Before, you could just, if you wanted to avoid glyphosate, you just avoided GMOs and you were good. No longer the case. Also, weeds have become resistant, and farmers need to apply a lot more to kill the weeds, and which is why they're now adding things like 2,4-D, which is an Agent Orange component, to Roundup, to their mixes because of glyphosate resistance. Glyphosate and minerals. Don Huber is a professor emeritus of plant pathology at Purdue University, and he is very engaged in trying to get glyphosate banned. He's amazing. He's doing talks all over the country. He has excellent presentations. If you can catch him, I highly recommend it. And he says glyphosate can immobilize plant nutrients such as manganese, copper, potassium, iron, magnesium, calcium, and zinc, so they are no longer nutritionally functional. So the plant can't use them. And there's a study he cited that found that there are significant reductions of minerals in Roundup-ready soybeans treated with glyphosate. So the crop has 26% less calcium, 13% less magnesium, 49% less iron, 45% less manganese, and I'm sure zinc is down too. So GMO crops, or any kind of crops treated with glyphosate, is going to be more mineral deficient than if it wasn't, and significantly more. Glyphosate and soil biology. Glyphosate persists and accumulates in soil and plants for an extended period. It's not readily biodegradable. It's generally just immobilized by chelation. It is toxic to soil organisms that facilitate nutrient access, availability or absorption of nutrients, and it inhibits the uptake and translocation of iron, manganese, and zinc at very low rates. So you don't need much to inhibit mineral absorption. And it stimulates soil-borne pathogenic and other soil microbes to reduce nutrient availability. So many of you are probably farmers, so you know how important it is, the soil biology is for the health of your plants. And actually the soil biology helps the plants take up minerals. So glyphosate is going to kill the good guys and stimulate pathogen growth. Glyphosate also increases mycotoxins in the stem, straw, grain, and fruit of plants. Mycotoxins are toxins produced by fungi. It reduces photosynthesis, so the plant essentially doesn't grow as well. And it accumulates in food and feed products to enter the food chain. So because it's not getting broken down in the soil, every year you're applying it, it just accumulates. Like every year there's going to be more in the soil and more in our food. And here's the link for that. And glyphosate is now everywhere. It was found in 65 to 100% of soil, air, and water samples in the Midwest. It's been found in 90% of the blood of pregnant women and their fetuses. And what's also scary, it's been found in 30% of breast milk. And Don Huber thinks it may be worse than DDT, which was pretty bad. And the US uses 25% of all glyphosate sold worldwide. So we're using a pretty high proportion of it. Glyphosate is probably the most toxic chemical ever introduced, according to Don Huber. So now let's talk about what glyphosate does to humans and how it's involved in creating or contributing to chronic disease. So first we'll start with the gut microbiome. Who knows what the gut microbiome is? Okay. So basically we have up to 100 trillion microbes in our gut. Just like the soil has a lot of microbes, we have them in our bodies. They make up 90% of cells in our body, and they produce nutrients for us and keep pathogens in check. We need them to survive. We could not survive without our microbiome. If we were to sterilize it, we would be in trouble. So what glyphosate does, when we ingest it, when it gets into our gut, it's going to kill microbes. It is actually patented as an antibiotic. That's what it does. And so we're ingesting it with food. It preferentially disrupts the beneficial flora, which are the ones that are producing nutrients for us. They're keeping us healthy. They're keeping the pathogens in check. And those are the ones that get killed first by glyphosate. And this then allows pathogens to take over. Our gut flora changes. They produce toxins. We get inflammation. And eventually the gut lining gets destroyed. And then we have what's called leaky gut. That's a term that basically means our gut wall isn't tight anymore. There's gaps in it, and things can leak through that are not supposed to get in. So those things would be toxins and pathogens that enter the bloodstream, but also partially undigested food particles, and that can cause autoimmune and allergies, all kinds of stuff. So the toxins and inflammation affect the body and the brain. It gets into the brain, and there you have your foundation for chronic disease. This is a slide from a Don Huber presentation, which is very interesting. He shows at the top the normal intestine of rats fed non-GMO corn, and so you can see what it's supposed to look like. And then at the bottom, he shows pictures of the intestine of rats fed GMO corn, and you can literally see fissures and cracks in the gut wall. It's a huge difference. So you can basically see the leaky gut right there. And if that's happening in rats, I mean, who's to say that that's not happening in people? And here's another picture. This is the intestine of a pig fed non-GMO feed. And over here is the intestine of the pig's, actually a stomach, fed GMO feed. And you can see how red and inflamed it is compared to, it's supposed to be white. And it's all like lots of inflammation over there. So this is basically a list of chronic diseases that have been linked to dysbiosis, which glyphosate can cause very easily. So everything from just weight gain to autism, learning disabilities, all kinds of autoimmune diseases. There's eczema, allergies, asthma, arthritis, Hashimoto's, and other stuff. And then all of the digestive problems like IBS, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, all of that is caused by gut dysbiosis. And then even things like Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, and cancer, where you wouldn't think that that's a gut problem, but there's a link to gut dysbiosis there. And then there's more. This is just, this list is not complete.